Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Fire Up with CJ show. We have Kurt Kuntz here today, and we're going to be talking about his book, A Million Steps, and about his trip to Camino de Santiago. So welcome, Kurt.
Thank you so much for having me on your program today, CJ.
It's great to have you here. So how was your New Year's?
Oh, couldn't have been better.
Yeah.
Really had a great time, friends and family, and it really worked out well.
All right, so we're all trying to get inspired for the new year. You had this inspirational trip where you took a spiritual pilgrimage, I would call it, through the Camino de Santiago. Tell us about, a pilgrimage is usually something in which you go looking for something to reaffirm your beliefs or values or understanding about yourself and the world. Tell us about your trip and what were you like before and what are you now after? Where it's like,
Yeah, on this particular trip, at the time that I left on the trip, I was 48 years old, and I've taken some similar journeys like this where I've gone on a month long or maybe a 6 week long kind of a journey. And I found from previous experience that those journeys are the most meaningful points in time in my life.
mm-hmm.
So I'd heard about the Camino de Santiago, and I knew that at some point in time I would go and walk it. And this is a long pilgrimage walk through Spain. It's actually a 500-mile walk. It turned out that in August of 2012, the sea kind of parted ways, and I decided to go. And by the time I booked my plane ticket and I was there, it was only 3 weeks. So it wasn't something I had kind of like thought about for 10 years or something.
Right.
I pretty much bought a ticket and went.
Wow.
In going over there, the biggest thing to do on a journey like this is you have to leave without expectations. If you go trying to find yourself or looking for some answer or something, things typically don't work out. If you go on a journey like this and you leave your expectations behind, that's where the really, really good stuff happens. So I arrived in France, which is the beginning of the trail, with, again, no expectations at all, and I had an absolute trip of a lifetime.
And how long was the trip?
I was gone from my home in Boise, Idaho for a total of 35 days, and it took me 28 days to walk. Most people walk it somewhere to the tune of about 25 days to maybe 40 days is a pretty good round number.
In fact, I don't know a lot about Camino de Santiago, so I wanted to find out a little bit about where is it, how long is it, what was it like traveling on that terrain?
The Camino is an incredible experience. First off, one of the things that drew me to this particular trail, people have been walking this exact same path for 1,300 years. 1 million people did it in the Middle Ages, and since that time, an additional 1 million people have done it.
What are they doing? Why are they walking this trail?
Well, it started out as purely in the Middle Ages as a Christian pilgrimage. And the story is that there was a man named St. James who was an apostle of Jesus. And he went to Jerusalem in 44 AD, and they promptly chopped his head off. And he was beheaded as a martyr for refusing to denounce religion. They apparently put his body on a ship and sent it back down to this area in Spain where he had done his preaching of the gospel. And the story says that the ship sank and his body was recovered on the shores covered in scallop shells. And the scallop shell became a metaphor, or it's one of the symbols of the trip. His body was brought inland, put into a nondescript grave, and 800 years later, a shepherd apparently discovered this gravesite. And it's believed that the cathedral, which is at the end of the road in Santiago, is literally St. James' bones are buried below the cathedral. So in the Middle Ages, people did this purely as a Christian pilgrimage walk, seeking penance from St. James. The thing that's really amazing is not only did those folks walk from their front doors, which could have been in Switzerland, Germany, Italy, wherever, when they got to Santiago, they turned around and they walked home.
Wow.
As you fast forward to today, it's much more of a modern pilgrim. Some are still very religious. Some are very spiritual. Some just have it as a bucket list item. And the number of people doing this is pretty astounding. In 1985, 5,000 people did it. 1995, it was 20,000. 2005, 100,000. 2010, 200,000 people.
Wow.
So there's a magic draw to this particular path.
Wow. So when you were there, when you were walking, were you there by yourself or you're surrounded by other people?
I showed up alone, and I would say probably 90% of the people I met along the way also showed up alone. And then some people tend to bunch up. Some people walk with different people every day. It's just whatever you want to do. On the day that I started, there was approximately, I think we figured about 300 people that started on that day. That's the shoulder season. I went in the fall. In the middle of summer, it can be upwards of 1,000 people a day.
Whoa, wow. Okay, so you're with, in your case, you were 300 different people, you're walking along. And then, as I understand it, the idea of the pilgrimage is that it could start anywhere, like you said, Switzerland, but it sounded like there was an official starting point, or where did you start when you started the trip?
Well, CJ, there's actually 9 different Caminos that actually, then they all arrive in Santiago. The
Okay.
one that I did is the most popular, and I believe 90% of the people that walk the
Uh,
Camino walk this particular one. It's called the Camino Francais. It starts in Saint John, which is a tiny city in France. And the first day you walk across the French Pyrenees, and I believe it's 10 miles in France and 6 miles in Spain on day one. The
mm,
remainder of the
yeah.
trip is all in Spain, and that's a 500-mile journey.
Oh my gosh. All right, that's a lot of walking.
It's a lot of walking.
Okay, so on your journey, so who were some of the people that, or the person that you look and think, this person actually changed my life, or meeting this person changed, shifted something in me?
It's a tough question to answer. I met so many interesting people every single day that it's kind of hard to pick out one overall person. So
Hmm.
let me go through a few vignettes of some different folks that I
Sure.
met.
Yeah.
First off, when you arrive there, there is an immediate bond with these people. It really,
Mm.
it almost is a feeling of one big family all trying to walk each other home to Santiago.
Mm.
When I met from Cuba, an unbelievable story that he told me about how he escaped Castro in the 60s.
Mm.
My very first friend was a detective from Germany, and he gave me a couple gifts, and it really was the first person I had met, so that was a significant person.
Walked in not expecting anything, just opening your mind to whatever was going to occur was going to occur. What did you end up finding, and what were the lessons you learned?
I found so many things. I would say number one was the whole concept of letting go. And one of the things I learned as you're walking along, these people come into your life all the time. I mean, you start walking, you bump into somebody, or you
Hmm.
at the albergue, which is where you stay, which are essentially hostels, you have dinner with somebody, and the next morning you might start to walk with them. I found it was very difficult to say goodbye to people up front. So I learned that people come into your life, they share their gift with you, and then there is a natural ending to a lot of relationships, and it's okay to walk on. I would say a second one was I've endeavored for a long part of my life to understand what being in the now is, or living in the now. The Camino sucks you into the now. Every day is unscripted. You don't know what the weather's going to be like. You don't know if your body's going to hold out. You don't know how far you're going to walk. You don't know where you're going to stay, and you don't know what you're going to eat. In that arena, you have zero time to worry about yesterday or to think about tomorrow.
You had 35 days of practice during that. In some ways, that's the ultimate practice, 35 days of just being present in the now so that you know what that is, so that you can snap back into it. Sounds like, is that right?
Very much so. It took me 48 years to figure it out, and in 35 days, I got it. Home run time.
I love it. All right, so tell us about the terrain, because it sounds like you didn't know what to expect. Like it may be raining, you didn't know what the food situation was. Why is that? So there's not like a little map that you have that someone says 5 miles today. Here's what you should do. Here's where you're going to stay.
There's definitely a little map, and the terrain is very interesting. It's a 500-mile walk, as I told you. The first day is by far the most difficult. You actually climb across the French Pyrenees, and it's a 5,000-foot elevation gain.
Whoa.
So day number one is so difficult that a lot of people start on day number two.
Yeah.
As you go through the next, let's say, 180 miles, it's pretty much rolling hills. So other than the first day, I think anybody can walk over these rolling hills.
Mm-hmm.
The second portion is an area called the Meseta. That's a 120-mile stretch, and it is long, flat, and barren.
Mm-hmm.
And in that period there, they say it's a little bit of kind of like the Don Quixote portion of the trail, where your mind has nothing to distract it, and you really go into a lot of inward thinking.
Mm-hmm.
The final portion of the trip, which is a 200-mile stretch, very similar to your country up there in Seattle, it's a real rich, lush rainforest type area.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of big mountains and rivers and streams and a real richness. The veterans told me that the first portion of the trip is for the body, and that's very accurate. walking over those hills, your body changes. You build muscles, you build stamina, and you go through some blisters and some pains you didn't know existed. The middle portion of the trip, they say, is for the mind, and it's very true because there is nothing to distract you. And again, as I mentioned, this Don Quixote type analogy. The final portion is you're in this rich, lush rainforest. You realize there's an end to the trip. And again, the veterans told me this final stretch is for the soul. And I'm telling you, with a clean mind and a strong body, realizing there's a finality of the trip, you really do just soak it up towards the end here. It's a great experience.
Beautiful story. All right, so if we wanted to get more about your story, it sounds good. The Million Steps, where I hear it's filled with stories, your observations, your personal experiences, and then also you have a speaking engagement. So tell us about how people who would like to have you come and speak to them. What's your URL? How can people find you?
Yeah, I do a lot of public speaking, and people can reach me at my website is my name, kurtkuntz.com, and that's KURTKOONTZ.com. You can contact me there. I have my phone number, my email, and I'd love to hear from anybody who'd like to hear me speak.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your journey. It sounds incredible. I can't wait to read the book.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you.
Goodbye.
We sure can.
Thanks for your support and listening to the Fired Up with CJ show. We have really exciting news for calendar year 2014. We are going to be moving to an exclusively YouTube channel. So we're going to have the same fabulous guests all on video. So you'll be able to feel the energy, see the people that I'll be talking to. There are 3 different ways of connecting with me. One is to subscribe to us on YouTube. The second is to find me on my website where you'll have hundreds of fabulous shows at www.firedupwithcj.com. And the third is to find me on Facebook. So thanks for staying connected and have a great calendar year 2014.